Hi, this is Nicole. I am so excited to be here today and to share a little bit about my journey with Chiari for Brainspire. A little bit about me before we dive in. I'm 25 years old. I currently live in Los Angeles, California, but I am originally from Culiacan, Sinaloa, Mexico. I've lived in LA for 2 years, came straight here after college, but I've spent most of my life in Mexico. So while my mom is American, my dad's Mexican, and I've lived with both citizenships in life, I consider myself more Mexican, which is why you will see a little bit of Spanish in my slides. Also, full disclaimer, I made this presentation for a keynote that I gave for my high school in Mexico. And while I was thinking about Brainspire, I was thinking about changing it up. And then I was like, you know what? Let's just do it raw. I love that it's from my phone and let's dive in. So, this presentation is built in a way that we're going through my phone and through my photos while I tell you a little bit about my story, my diagnosis with Chiari, and just how I went from being completely healthy or thinking I was to finding my diagnosis, and you'll hear about it after everything. So, this all starts, well, I call this, or every time I've sort of given my testimony, I love to frame it around the sentence, La belleza de tu cicatriz, which is the beauty of your scar. You'll see why, but I love it. So this is why this is showing up here. And we're unlocking my phone. Let's go to my photos. I know, crazy. But this all started when I was on a plane when I was 18 years old. 18 years old. I was like 17 or 18, 18 years old. I was about to graduate high school. And we were going on a trip with my high school to see different colleges in Mexico. At that time, I thought that I would go to college here in the US, but we were just touring around colleges with my friends, and it was so exciting. And when I had a normal high school weekend on the flight back home, 45 or so minutes into the flight, I tried to stand up to go to the bathroom and I immediately fell to the floor. Me being who I am, I've always been clumsy. So I was like, oh, fun. I just fell in the middle of a plane with like everyone in my high school. And you know how high school kids are. We think that everyone is just looking at us. I was also in like the front row of the plane. So it was just like literally right next to the bathroom. Anyways, as I was laying on the floor, I stopped feeling my left leg. I could not stand up. I could not understand why. I had my friends help me get up, but they literally had to like pick me up and put me back on my seat because my left leg was completely like wobbly and like I couldn't feel it. I didn't have any sensation of like my hand touching. Well, I could feel it in my hand, but not on my leg. It's funny whenever I say this and I'm just like touching my leg and it's just like so crazy. But that's how my story began on a plane. Very dramatic, but it when I look back at it, it had to be that way so that I could actually just pursue a diagnosis. Because when I landed and I went to the hospital in Mexico, unfortunately, and if you're watching this and you or someone you know has Chiari, you know how hard it is to explain a rare disease or something that is not that common or that is, I don't know, at least during that time in Mexico, that particular hospital, they ran all the tests and the neurologist, everyone involved in my case didn't find anything. They didn't find Chiari. They didn't know what was happening. At that time, I was still not feeling my leg. And so I felt like I was walking like this. I was in the dark. I didn't know what to do. I was 18, had never been in the hospital before, super healthy. So it was pretty scary. I was in the hospital for 3 days, and by the third day, I had gained mobility of my left leg. It started like waking up slowly throughout the days. And I started going to physiotherapy. but I was still feeling very like wobbly and just like insecure about my body and why it was acting that way. I just remember feeling very lost and brain fogged. Um, and so I left the hospital thinking that it had been a very rare anxiety attack. Um, this was pre-COVID. And while if it had been an anxiety attack, that would have been okay at that time, I just felt like I didn't really know anyone that had an anxiety attack with that magnitude, or there weren't just enough mental health conversations during that time for me to understand what was going on. So I just felt a lot of guilt. Um, felt a little guilt. I felt a lot of insecurity. I didn't know what was happening. And I was also, in a way, just determined to find what it was because I was 18. I was about to go to college. I was sure, and I put this phrase here, that it is in the most difficult moments that everything is put to test because I was like, me being an overachiever and a perfectionist, I was like, this is a test. Get your things together, Nicole. Let's go to therapy. Let's go to physiotherapy and let's just focus on our physical and mental health, eat as healthy as we can. Like I just went hardcore and like, I'm gonna fix this. That's just my personality. And I was doing physiotherapy twice a day, figuring everything, health being super expensive, figuring everything financially, just with my family and insurance and just everything was also just, you know, um, crazy at that time. But I was just determined to, get better. At that time, I had never heard Chiari, nor my doctors thought this was related to Chiari. So we just kept running tests and nothing was showing up, at least that could be conducive of Chiari until a couple months later, when after that last MRI, I think it was it says here actually, January 30th, because I remember so many tests, doctors in the US, doctors in Mexico, no, nothing, we weren't getting any answers. I was waiting for a doctor appointment in the US and I went to see a neurologist in Mexico and he ordered me that last MRI. And that's when he told me after the MRI that I had Chiari and that given my symptoms that it was a recommendation for me to get a decompression surgery. So I remember feeling very scared because I was a Grey's Anatomy fan. And I was just like, brain surgery, Derek Shepherd, my brain open. Like that's all I felt. But I can't tell you this story without bringing in God. And I really want to make an emphasis here that it's whatever God you believe in. If this helps you or doesn't help you, like I am such, it's just my story and who I am. Like I can't tell this without bringing in God because after that doctor appointment, I went home and I have an aunt who had given me this book where like every day you can read something and it's like kind of uses, things from the Bible. I'm Catholic, but and at the very end of a page, it's that even when you can't understand them, trust my ways are always perfect. So I just remember reading this and being like, okay, I don't understand what's going on. I don't know what Chiari Malformation is. I will Google everything. By that time, I probably had Googled everything already. But I will trust. I will trust in my doctors and I will trust in God. And this being something that I was born with, I just felt something in my mind about, and I just went back from me being in the plane and thinking like, this has to be something. So I went full mode, like, let's try to find a doctor that's experienced with Chiari. Um, Getting the surgery by that time, I had gained mobility of my left leg, but my neck was hurting a lot. I did have a lot of headaches. So I was just like very tired, and my body was just like, let's fix this. And after all the tests, learning about the surgery, figuring out like insurance, doctors, things, I think he was, I don't know what number of doctor I saw, but by this time, but he's called Dr. De Leo in Mexico City, and he's the one who performed my surgery. And I remember when I walked into his office, there was a guy that asked me if I was coming in for an appointment with him, and I was like, is it that obvious? Like I was wearing a neck brace, and a walking cane. And he was like, don't worry, he's not the one performing the surgery. It's got through his hands. I later learned that my doctor had written a book, and he was just like, I don't know, like it's just what I needed to hear. And he's an awesome doctor. And at that time, it's just he gave me a reassurance. He knew everything related to Chiari and syringomyelia, super experienced with the surgery. So I like I know I went by quickly on those last the just finding my diagnosis, but there were so many doctors involved and so many tests involved, and I just felt I felt very alone. And I think just finding someone who knows about my condition and knows about the surgery and gave me the assurance of that I could get this surgery, and that the recovery would go well. Just it's what I needed to hear and what I wanted to hear. So I felt very safe. This was another plane ride. I love sunsets, but for me, this was just like reminding myself, this was right before the surgery, keeping all the attitude, and hyping myself up to be ready for what was coming. You will see me doing this in so many photos. It's crazy, but I was having fun even in the midst of chaos. And then another thing to note, because it'll come up, I always been passionate about social impact. So I knew I wanted to major in international relations, and I did. But during that time, right before my like paralysis, I had applied to be a UN young delegate for Mexico to go to the Commission of the Status of Women. And I had found out that I was accepted. So during all of this time, and I think this is very crucial because while this applies, I always think back on this, like you need to have something to like look forward to, at least in my mind. I was like, I want to go to the UN. Like I want to get healthy and feel better so I can live. And I also want to go to UN. So I just held on to that dream a lot. And it's honestly something that just kept motivating me in dark times like this. And that's my dad. He was there by my side. My mom too. She was in the video. My family was they're my pillars too. Like they were there, and it was tough. Like having a decompression surgery, I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty scary. It hurts a lot. I found out that I was allergic to penicillin, and cephalosporin. So it was just like a lot. Like my recovery was the first couple of days after the surgery was just a little scary. But I was determined and had great doctors and my family helping. So these are just like some of my first steps after the surgery. My left leg was not wobbly anymore. I didn't have a walking cane, but I had this. But I knew that I just, was gonna get better. And being Chiari, what it is, it's just, like determination. So this is my battle scar. And this is why I call this the beauty of your scar, because even to this day, whenever I need to feel brave or I just need a reminder, I touch it. I'm always like, it's just such a huge reminder of pulling through in a tough situation, trusting, speaking out of privilege. Obviously, I know I had access to doctors and was able to find a great doctor who knew about that condition, but it's my battle scar. And if you're watching this and you have twinsies, I ended up going to the UN afterwards, and it was just a dream. That video says "a cumplir un sueño," and that was me. And it was just the best experience because it helped me just realize just how powerful being involved in my community, and even just not on a local but on a global level, was. It helped me, get my I'd just gone through this trauma. Now, like, let's put our voice out there. And it was just amazing. Being at the Commission of the Status of Women. It was amazing. Just unfortunately, after going to the UN, I contracted bacterial meningitis. So doctors will never, I mean, I don't even know how I got it. I just know I did. And that's when it was just pretty scary. I didn't add a translation here, but for me, this was like, I didn't get all the way here just to stay here. Like I just survived brain surgery. I just went to the UN under this program that I was my dream. Like I will push through this as well. That's me praying. I'm sorry. I can't, I don't even want to apologize, but at the same time, like it's just who I am and it's the truth of how I handle this, I think. And I really want to show it. Um, it was pretty scary because having had the surgery and then bacterial meningitis, I had a CSF leak, but we couldn't do another surgery because of the meningitis. So I was in a very tough situation where it was like, one, I'm allergic to antibiotics. I was given antibiotics, just different ones. But then two, like I have a leak. It was a mess. Here I just remember being at the hospital with meningitis and just looking back at what I had wrote while being at the UN. And just there's a part that says, for every tear, for every fear, for every obstacle, there will be a bigger blessing. And that's why it is worth to keep fighting on. So, needless to say, I wrote that for my future self. I was in the hospital for more than 24 days with bacterial meningitis. That was the first time I saw the sun. And it is truly a moment I will never forget. This was my door. People thought there was a little girl that had been born. It was me. My nickname is Nikki. And those were just my friends. It was like around Easter, so we decorated it all. Well, they did. And after being in the hospital for almost 24 days, I did graduate high school. So I was literally doing like tests and homework while being in the hospital in and out. I successfully survived bacterial meningitis, which is bacterial meningitis being an infection of I'm going to say this word wrong, meninges, the membrane that covers your brain. It's just, there's so many cases, more cases of just, like people losing their limbs, people losing their hearing. My doctors did prepare me that I could lose my hearing. And it was just so hard because for me, it was just like, I just heard my voice being, you know what I mean? Like I was just scared, but trusting and putting all of my efforts. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't like every day. It was not I was not a great cloud. Like I had very bad days, but I think ultimately, just thankfully having a great team of doctors and support and me being young and healthy, but pushing through. So I did graduate high school. And I remember always thinking about my high school graduation and being like, how am I going to show up? This was a friend who I had talked to, and she was like, she will help me. And a year later, from my paralysis, I was on a plane. I think it was like a year and a day later. It was not like the exact year. And I did make it to the bathroom this time. This is me just giving thanks a year after. And then this is where the beauty of your scar comes in. So there's this Japanese practice where they paint when a vase or something gets broken, they paint it with gold instead of glue. It's called kintsugi, and I fell in love with it when I heard about it because I loved it. The philosophy behind it, it's that when something gets broken and you glue it with gold, it's not only more resistant, but it enhances the beauty of the scar that was there. And that just resonated so much with me. And if you're listening to this, you may or may not have Chiari, you may or may not have syringomyelia, you may or may not have a disease, but you have scars, internal and external. I'm not sure if external, but, and I just, whenever I look at this stage in my life and just what has come after as well, I always keep this practice to heart because I think it truly showed me that it is in your vulnerability where you can find your greatest strength. It is in that rawness and that scar and going through these experiences that I found my greatest strength. I found that inner gut, inner intuition of when they had told me that it was anxiety and a mental health issue and I was given antidepressants, even though that time, you know what I mean, I didn't need them, to just find my intuition. And I don't think I explained this really well, but I just kept saying it's not only that, like there's something else that I need to find. Like my body, my neck hurts, like there's just something that is not right. um but it is also just in being vulnerable and showing up as we are where I think I found just my greatest strength. I don't know why this is not turning. So this is my scar again. And this is, let's see if it, this is with kintsugi. So again, just showcasing the beauty of our scars. And another thing that I love about this practice is that the artisan or whoever is putting those pieces together will need help, whether it's from, the glue, the gold, or whoever is there helping. And like I said, I don't think I can share my experience without those people, those friends that like put that on my hospital door, or like my mom being there before my surgery and hyping me up, or my dad being there in those dark times. My brothers, myself, God, the doctors, like and even today, like you need help. And I think that's just one of the things that just it helped me a lot to realize. And I love that about kintsugi because it's a community thing, or at least that's how it was in my experience. Just, necesitas ayuda para pegar tus piezas. So that's something that I truly learned during this. That's my door. And I don't know why this is not working. Another thing that I learned a lot during this experience was to follow our intuition and our curiosity because they are your compass. And as I said, I always wanted to major in international relations. I ended up going to college for that. And after college, well, during my last year of college, I started working for a fundraising platform based here in LA that's called Pledge. We work with the Chiari Project. If you text Chiari to 707070, you can donate to the Chiari Project. Right now, being the month of May, we're fundraising for syringomyelia awareness. So this is just another thing that, going back to my health, just knowing that it was not meant only mental health. Honestly, it was part of it, but I had Chiari. I had something that I knew that I had to find. And also just my curiosity in life of being like, I want to do this. I want to do something better. And I think that part of me working, and that's what I do for a living. I work for Pledge. And it's just a way to support all of these causes and, help, in this case, fund research for Chiari, syringomyelia, and pain management. But we support over 1.6 million nonprofits across the globe. So if you want to get involved, text Chiari to 707070. And we'll also leave the URL in the webpage where this video will be, so you can donate if you like. This is just a photo that I was given last year of how many donations I had contributed to or help with the company. And then lastly, just going back to that page that I showed you guys when I found about my diagnosis, it's that even when you can't understand, trust my ways are always perfect. And then being at the UN and saying this, I have to say without any doubt that for every adversity, a bigger blessing will come. So, por cada adversidad siempre vendrá una bendición mucho más grande. Um, to be completely frank, it is not easy, but it is all worth it. And I love that the Chiari Project helps, you know, like connect people that have been through this, that have Chiari, that have decompressed or have not yet or will not be decompressed, because it's totally a personal decision and opinion depending on your medical doctors and your case or have or not have syringomyelia. But I think ultimately having a sense of community, and it's just like that door in the hospital and throughout life, I know that this is something that I will always take up with me. Thankfully, I am so healthy. I do get brain fogged every now and then. I have to eat very healthy. I have to be very careful with my posture because I have scoliosis as well. Just things like that. But ultimately, I think I really think about Chiari as a blessing now. And I have so many people and doctors and myself to thank, to be honest, and got to. But anyways, this is a little bit about my story. If you want to talk or if you want to reach out, I'll leave my email and my contact info. Also, if you want to learn more about Pledge and how we support the Chiari Project as our fundraising platform too, happy to chat about that or anything. Thank you for listening, and I appreciate you.